Welcome to Trade Finance Talks. My name is Tapesh Patel, editor at Trade Finance Global. Today we're talking about documentary credits, and documentary credits really are a vital component of international trade. In fact, history has shown that the very first documentary credits emerged in Europe in the 1800s. Since their introduction, practitioners have attempted to understand their complex nature, which only gotten more complex in the years since. And 25 years ago, the London Institute of Banking and Finance, or LIBF, designed a course specifically to educate practitioners about documentary credits called the CDCS, or the Certificate for Documentary Credit Specialist Program, which really helped to educate the public about documentary credits and all of their intricacies. And that's what we're talking about today. I'm really delighted to introduce Alex Gray from LIBF and Gary Collier at Collier Consulting Global. And we're going to be talking about the history of the CDCS, the importance of documentary credits, and how they continue to evolve. Alex, Gary, welcome to Trade Finance Talks TV.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Thank you. Great to see you again, Tapesh.
Great to see you too. So quick elevator pitch, and Alex, over to you to start. Who are you? Where are you from? And what do you do?
Alex Gray, Director of Trade and Transaction Banking at the London Institute of Banking and Finance. I am, of course, from Scotland, just in case anybody, but brought up in the banking world through HSBC and then a stint at Santander. And HSBC was where I met Gary. So over to you, Gary.
Okay, thanks, Alex. My background started with Midland Bank. A few of you out there may recall that name, which disappeared when HSBC took them over. Then evolved into a move to Citibank, which surprised me more than anybody else that I actually moved from HSBC at the time, and then ABN AMRO. And from there, I decided to start my own company, Collier Consulting Global Limited, on the basis that I would provide training and education to banks and corporates globally. But mixed in amongst all those years between Midland Bank and the establishment of my company, I was involved in a number of things for the ICC, being their senior technical advisor. And also, during this time, been involved, I think, in about 4 or 5 revisions of the CDCS syllabus booklet, which was first written by 3 well-known people at the time: Lakshman Wickramaratne, or Wiki for short, Steve Beresford, and Michael Rowe. And I'll be talking a little bit about their influence on where we are today in the CDCS book when we start talking a little bit more detail about the actual program itself.
When it started off, there was just a few hundred people doing it every year. But now we're looking at about a couple of thousand trade professionals doing it every year around the world. And now we're looking at 112 countries, people doing it. So it's truly an international qualification. So it's very much a benchmark in its field for people who are handling documentary credits. Or, depending on where you are in the world, it might be letters of credit, because you have, of course, your book behind you, letters of credit. So we're using the 2 terms, depending. I've worked in a number of countries. In some countries it's LCs, some countries it's DCs. But CDCS, we went for the official thing with, related to UCP 600. We have about 30,000 people have qualified over the 25 years. And the fact is that, it's known as being a tough qualification. You get a number of other providers doing maybe shorter training, give you a background, a basis. But what we're looking at here is, doing about 200 hours of studying over, you can do it over 12 months. But when you're passing it, everybody knows that you've had to work very, very hard. Some banks give an incentive to people to pass. They'll maybe even up their salary, which I think is a great thing, because all the people that are doing it, they're doing it in their spare time, generally. I would try and give a study leave when possible, with people getting close to the exam. But, they're doing it off their own backs. So to further their careers, but also to help the organization they work with. With the people doing the qualification globally, it does help sort of standardize the approach that, people can refer to that. Because you have one, as you said, we got CDCS people corresponding with each other using different channels, but they've got that as a kind of the benchmark, which I think is a big help for the international trade world.
If we talk about, LCs being there since the 1800s and everything else, and we talk about, how LCs probably have evolved since the 60s. And remember, the UK only became a subscriber to UCP in 1962. They were one of the late ones. So, the reality is that, okay, we're talking, 60 odd years. But the reality is what we miss today is not how the product probably 60 years ago is very similar to what we have today. Is in content, in structure. What we have is different interpretations, different standards, and different ways in which people approach. And that is because, a lot of people don't have access to ICC material. They don't have access to online material. They don't, and sometimes that online material maybe is not really truly effective, that, someone's given a view that is way off bat, and I've seen quite a few of these, and you think, well, I hope nobody's reading this because it's completely wrong. But the CDCS booklet, as when I've edited it, I've gone through it on a basis saying, what would I want to know? And how can I then use that information if the person next to me isn't a CDCS? How I can educate those people and say, look, this is the way we should do it. Make them rethink how the bank organizes themselves and does the processes for themselves, as opposed to just sitting there day in, day out doing their daily task. And I think, hopefully, the actual syllabus has opened the eyes of a lot of people to a lot of things that they didn't know, that they hadn't been subjected to because their bank or their country are not involved in those products. It's widened their knowledge base. So I think from that perspective alone, whether they took the exam or not, can actually gain from the actual syllabus and everything else that was made available to them. As I mentioned earlier, the reality today is, unless you're in a small bank, and by small bank I mean sort of like a dozen people or less, and there are those around, even in London, a number of the foreign banks, where you would then be open to all the different functions within a letter of credit, and therefore you're seeing all aspects of the transactions on a daily basis. For the larger banks, you're more likely to be closeted into, am I doing the issuance of LCs? Am I doing the examination of documents for our LCs or for export LCs, or am I doing this particular function? So the understanding, or the in-depth understanding of all these different parts of the product are going to vary in percentage terms. You could be 100% on doc check because I've done a document examination for the last 8 years. But I may not know a lot about how we look at issuance of LCs or the advising of LCs. So on that basis, the syllabus is designed to actually get to the point where you can effectively describe to a trainee, however you want to describe them, trainee, student, that this is what this function is about. This is what the product requirements are. This is what you need to know to be able to perform this task. These are the rules which are applicable to this task. These are the things that you need to know. So hopefully that fills the void, because once you come to the examination, you're not going to get questions based upon what you've done for the last 8 years. You're going to have a whole range of questions which are going to be across, in the booklet form, it was like 500 pages, I think, the book. So you're going to get questions across the board based upon the different chapters within there. Therefore, you cannot expect to reasonably pass the examination unless you've understood what is in each of those different chapters.
It's one of these things with COVID, what accelerated was our ability to deliver it online. And so in the past 3-4 years, it used to be a paper exam twice a year around the world. And only in a number of countries, but not as many as we have now, because everybody can do it whenever they want in a examination center with Pearson VUE. But in those days, around the world, everybody was going at the same time to exam. Now, if you're doing your whole team, you're saying your whole team, you want them to do CDCS, and then they've all got the exam on the same day. You, as a manager, whilst you're trying to develop your team, have created a problem for yourself because on the Friday, well, in Europe it was on a Friday, in Asia it was on a Saturday, partly because of this issue. And your team would be decimated. So now we're happy that people are doing the exam when they want to, whether you prefer it be in the morning or the evening, and if there's something happens at the last minute, some family issue you have to look after, you can postpone the exam and do it a week later. And that because of that, I'm pleased to say that the pass rates have gone up.
Helps to bring all the components together, because any bank today will very rarely, apart from maybe some of the smaller banks, have people who are basically doing every job. So you go in on a Monday and you'll be doing 5 different tasks during the day. Most banks, you go in on a Monday, you're doing one task that day, and you're doing the same task the next day and the day after, and then you develop into the other roles. But the CDCS book opens up that window for these people to see what these other aspects of the actual product is, and how you can actually sort of use it in your day-to-day work. Evidence into the world. I actually sat that exam. I studied for it. I actually passed it. And potentially those people have recertified over the number of years. So in effect, it becomes almost like a family of people. There's a lot of LinkedIn groups that set themselves up on the back of the CDCS. And it's opened up new avenues for people to make acquaintances with people in other countries that they would never have done sitting at their desk 9 till 5 or 7 till 7, wherever you are.
I was going to say.
Basically, with only the people around you as the faces that you know. So I think it's had a much broader kind of effect on people than just, I'm going to study this at the weekend or of an evening, and then in April or October or whenever, I'm going to take the examination. It's evolved a lot more since there. And I think people need to recognize that, because it is now, people, I've had people coming to me, where's CDCS 2? It's like a movie kind of thing. Can we have a second version that takes me to a next level? That's the way in which it's evolving. And I think that's important for people to understand that, it's there. It's something that, it's a choice you can make. A lot of people have hinged their careers on taking and passing CDCS. A lot of banks take high level credence of the actual examination when they do an interview for people. Before, I could turn up, sit down, say, hi, I'm John Smith. Yeah, I know about LCs. I can do anything in LCs, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I can check documents. I can do this. Okay, I'll hire you. You come in on day one, you can't do anything. It's, you sell yourself at an interview. But somebody with CDCS as a qualification on their CV elevates them to a slightly different level, and actually gets you, I think, a stage further in that interview process. I think the reality, and one of them probably the main misconception, is one that probably isn't covered by the book as such. The biggest misconception you hear today is the death of the LC.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is far from the truth. If you look at data that comes out of SWIFT, okay, there's a movement of 3 or 4% maybe per year on average. But you see a spike, as we saw in the financial crisis of 2008, 2009. Suddenly LCs went through the roof because everybody was coming out of all the other products. So it's a product that people will use when they want to use it. The reality we have today is that we need to have a level of standardization. And we've already mentioned that word, I think, 3 times this morning between me and Alex. But it is very important because when I do my training for people in the banks, I will say to them that, if I want to put you through CDCS, or I want to put you through any other kind of qualification, I want to be sure that you are going to do yourself justice and ultimately the bank justice. The reality at the end of the day is that, the process that we have within the banks, doesn't facilitate learning to a large degree. We have a lot of information which is out there. There's a lot of ICC opinions. There's a lot of ICC guidance notes. There's even the International Standard Banking Practice publication. You'd be amazed how many people don't even have a copy of that publication and don't have access to all that other material. So the reality is that having a booklet that brings together all facets of letter of credit process is absolutely strange to the world, because it doesn't exist in a lot of things, not to the detail. But I think when we start looking at the letter of credit product, the product has been there hundreds of years. Let's face facts.
Yeah.
There's even thing going back to, I think, a thing that they found in Babylon, which is what now Iraq, which was a tablet, which was basically a form of LC. So the reality is the product's been there, but what we lose is the same interpretation and the same standardization. I've always told people I could put 10 people in a room, give them one set of documents and say, examine them, and I'll get 10 different answers. Now, people say, well, how can I get 10 different answers? It's either okay or it's not okay. But yeah, okay, you got not okay or okay. But how did I reach the decision that it was okay or not? That's where it's different. And that's where their interpretation skills or their understanding of the rules comes into play.
There's one in terms of misconception about LCs, because Gary, you do some work for the fintech Complidator, which is looking to do doc checking using AI. And a lot of people say, well, if you've got AI doing the doc checking, that's going to be the end of a doc checker. But actually, that I see from the other side is that the banks that are looking to take on that technology, they want their people to be CDCS qualified, because they're not going to have the head in the documents for an hour and a half. They're going to get the checking done quickly, and also the compliance checks, and then they're going to go to a person, and the person has to make a decision. And so I'm seeing much more of those banks, some of them publicizing the various initiatives they're working on, but they tend to want their people to be qualified to making those decisions. Maybe it's worthwhile talking about, because this is in terms of the future of doc checking. I want to make people to know that CDCS will still be around if AI is doing the doc checking, because you still need people for that same aspect you were talking about. People will have a different viewpoint. So the technology is helping, but you need people who are qualified to make the decisions.
If you look at when blockchain was first talked about, everybody was sort of, oh God, here we go. We're going to go into a whole new paradigm, and therefore we had all the things of LCs are finished. We're going to go. But you look at a number of the blockchain platforms; they actually have their own LC formats within the platform. So it may not be sent by a SWIFT, but it's still an LC. And you look at it; it's still in a similar structure. You've still got to examine documents, whether they're paper or electronic. So the reality is it's still there. Now we're back to development of EUCP, but EUCP's been there for 22 years. 22 years. And what's the volume? The last ICC survey, and they used to do annual surveys, I think the last one was dated 2020, 2021. SWIFT used to provide data for that, i.e. Traffic volumes by country, by region, everything else. And in one of those reports that they gave, they said at the time, 0.1% of the LC sent by MT700 were EUCP. 0.1%. And it's almost become like a product for not the elite, but for a certain segment.
Thank you very much, Gary and Alex. I think you very clearly explained, the LC is certainly here to stay. We've definitely seen an evolution in the LC, and I think it's also important to continue to educate the market, provide those standards, provide that rigid thinking, and even with the onset of new technologies, the LC is the underlying kind of infrastructure that enables cross-border trade, particularly in geopolitically uncertain times when we see supply chains, decoupling, reshoring, nearshoring, and friendshoring. I think it's a very exciting time for letters of credit. So long may they live. So that was Alex Gray at LIBF and Gary Collier really giving an overview of the CDCS course. Happy 25th anniversary. There's lots more information about the course on the Trade Finance Global website. You can kind of read a bit of a primer on our LC guides that we published with David Maynor, who was one of the first people that did the test. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.